Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be working on this painting by a Russian painter who is one of my favorite painters when it comes to his brushwork, his technicality, his naturalism, realism, and that is Ilya Repin. I made a acrylic version of this portrait which sits at the Met in New York City a few years back, and I decided to recreate this in oil to kind of give a quick sketch of how I would approach it or how I thought maybe he approached it. And you start to see from the beginning, I'm blocking in these shapes, I'm blocking in these lines, trying to measure the relationships between the features. And as we go on with color, with a bit of color, we're going to be blocking in some of these values, these darker values first, then we're going to go into some of the mid-tone, some of the lighter values, but simplification is the most important thing. As usual, as I mentioned in all of my other videos, make sure to check those out as well. Keeping things simple is crucial, especially in the beginning. You don't want to go to any sort of detail in the beginning, or else it's going to get messy. Unfortunately, it's going to get disproportionate, it's going to get weird and wonky, so it's best to just keep it simple. Focus on the shapes are accurate, cool, we'll move on. Add in some other details, so to speak, or some other features, and the simpler the better. As you develop, then you get more detailed. So now that that's out of the way, I'm seeing a lot of subtle nuances within his portrait, which is what makes it so captivating. The gaze, along with the subtleties of the looseness in the hair, even in some areas of shadow, you start to see more, not necessarily blending, but details start to collapse. Whereas in areas that are more in the light, areas that are more closer to the viewer, like the nose, like the glossiness of his cheeks and the eye, he really chooses specific areas to develop while allowing other areas to completely collapse within the painting and remain loose, remain fresh, and remain, you could even say, unconsidered, although it's extremely considered. You start to look at the shadows and they just become large shapes with very subtle shifts in the values, like how his shirt goes into his beard, and then subtleties of light within the beard, as well as how the hair on the left hand side kind of blends and comes off into the background in a certain way, whereas the hair that's on the right hand side is more contained. The hair that's close to his face, how that's treated a little different from the hair that's above his head. All of these things are really important to know when we start to make these copies, and then also when we start to integrate the things that we learn from the copies into our own paintings. And as I'm watching me paint this, now that I'm doing this audio recording for you guys, I'm starting to see that I probably should have added the rest of the dark value of the beard and the shirt first, along with the hair and the other features. I should have probably blocked that in first, because it'll give me a better foundation to build upon. And this is something that I'm noticing that caused me to struggle while making this copy, now that I'm looking back at it. So yeah, this is just something that I wanted to bring up as I'm watching it over. And usually I'm scripting what I'm gonna say within these videos. Today I'm not doing that. Today I'm just kind of watching it back, trying to think at what my process was, trying to reflect on this painting by Ilya Repin, and just talk into the mic. So that's what I'm doing today, which is a little different from what I usually do. So if you guys have any comments, any feedback, any questions that you'd like me to answer in future videos, please let me know. Write them in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video, and we'll continue. So one other key factor that I wanted to bring up is that I'm using my palette, which I have a very limited palette. I basically have sometimes an alizarin crimson, sometimes a cadmium red. So those are the two reds that I have. And then I'll have a yellow, I'll have a blue, I'll have a white. Sometimes I'll have some brown, whether it's some sort of sienna or some sort of umber. And I usually have those 4 to 5 colors. and I work off of that. I'm not exactly sure what Ilya Repin's palette was like, which is something that I should investigate as well. I know that has a big impact in what the final outcome becomes, and I like the limited palette because it creates unity within the painting. I'm not bouncing around, I'm mixing these colors, so there's a level of unity within all of my paintings, and that's something that I'm very intentional about. But every artist has a different way of working. You know, there's the Zorn palette. I'm sure Sargent has his palette that he prefers, his blues, his reds, his yellows, perhaps some other colors in there as well. And I'm sure Ilya Repin had his as well. One thing that's not unique to Ilya Repin, and you start to see this the more that you're looking at these old master paintings, is these shadows that they create. They don't really focus too much on creating just the value, which the value is important, of course, to create the shape of whatever it is you're painting, to give it volume, but they focus on the temperature. So if you look closely, you see right underneath the eyelid, there's this red color. Right where the lips, that line for the lips is that separate the upper and lower lip, there's a rich, very dark red color. Underneath the nose, there's a darker color. Underneath the ear, there's a darker red color as well. So they really focus on the temperature of the color, and that'll be dictated upon what it is that they're painting. So lips, ears, nose get more of these red colors, even the eyes, but perhaps a shadow of hair or a shadow that's created from another place. It might be a cooler temperature just to give a contrast, and it's something that I find really important to notice. And anytime you're looking at a painting, you really want to be looking at the details, even though you don't want to start by painting details in your own process of painting, but you want to start looking very closely at these subtle decisions that really make the painting. It makes the painting stand out. It makes the painting more impactful, more naturalistic, and it's something that I like to look at. And now we're getting into the background. And the background is super important because it's another way to give what it is that you're painting, this object, this figure, to give it form. How does the background and the figure integrate in the painting? How are these edges? Is it a very sharp edge? Is it a very loose edge? Is it more blended? What do these things mean? So paying attention to these decisions that the artists make and then incorporating it into your own paintings, into your own practice, is very important and going to elevate your painting that much more. It's going to make it look a lot more mature, a lot more naturalistic, and just something that you really want to focus on, because perhaps you want to have all hard edges, or perhaps you want to have all soft edges. That's something to be very intentional about as you're working. All right, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, write them down below. I'll be addressing them in future videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.